Hey there, AEC CMers. We wanted to give you an update on our workshop yesterday for working with Assemble and the workflow for trying to capture the assembly codes and have them transfer back and forth to Assemble cleanly. So you can have the kind of nicest workflow where all your work is preserved and you don't have to kind of keep on reassigning the assembly codes. So let's go ahead and take a look at how you can do that. It's really just going to be an update on what we looked at yesterday. And again, we're going to work with this little building that we work often for kind of doing these architectural demos. I'm going to switch over to Assemble as a starting point. And get over there. And in Assemble, we're going to basically create a new model over here. We're going to do it in a slightly different way. But before we do that, I'll just remind you that we're going to start by just setting up our work breakdown structure. So for our cost breakdown structure, we can look at the data trees. And this is the current assembly code structure that we have set up right now. And you might remember we exported this, well, as an Excel file. Then we came over to Excel, edited it in Excel. We can start making some changes. The big changes that were important here were the specific items. We had to be sure to add in both the unit cost and the unit. So what it is that it's used to, kind of multiply by. So now we're going to quantify that. So we figured out that area was a proper one, volume was a proper one, all the different column headings that show up in Assemble. So when we came on back and we imported that put all those codes here in the structure. You can kind of check them here, and I'd recommend checking them before you go on. Okay, there they are, ready to be used. And then I'm going to add to the whole workflow right now is in order to keep everything in sync and really make sure we have the same assembly codes in use everywhere, is to go one step further, and that is to take that data tree that you've put into Assemble and are using and export it. And we're going to actually export it for Revit. What that's going to do is create a text file that will then bring that same exact structure into Revit. So we can assign the codes there to the Revit families in Revit. And by having that same dictionary of assembly codes and what they all mean and what the costs are associated with each of those codes consistent, that'll really help the whole workflow. It'll make things just go very, very automatically for you. So I'm going to choose Export to Revit. You see, it's going to create a text file for us here. Okay, it's in my Downloads folder right now. It's kind of hanging around right there. And what we're going to do in Revit is point to that so that we're using the same codes. So as a reminder, just to kind of check that it's all working, if we look at the codes that we added in here for the exterior enclosure, you might remember there's 2010 and there's, 180, 185, 195 for the different wall types. So here they all are. So we want to see that in Revit so we can use it and then assign those to the Revit kind of families that associate with those. Okay, so we're done over here. Again, sort of, create your structure, edit it in Excel, import it into Assemble, then also export it to Revit. Then let's go over to Revit and see how we can actually use it over there. So we're going to come over to Revit. And in Revit, what we can do is actually use that file for assigning assembly codes. Where that exists is under the Manage, which is where a lot of kind of uncommonly changed settings exist. We'll go to Additional Settings and choose Assembly Codes. And this is where we choose that file. And you can browse and find that file. And I found one of the ones that's out here. Right now it's just in my Downloads folder. You should put it in a better place where you can access it when you're assigning these assembly codes. Okay. And if we've put that in there, well, let me just reload it here. So you see, reloaded. Super. The effect of that is now when we say that we want to assign an assembly code to an element, okay, and we, for example, go to that wall, assembly codes in Revit are assigned as a family type property. So if you edit the types, you'll scroll on down and you'll see that there's assembly code right here. Okay, this one is assigned to 190. That is one of the types one of the assembly codes that we have in Assemble to work with. If you kind of click on that, you'll actually bring up the little dialog which lets you choose those codes. And you can see that 180, 185, and 190 are available in here. So that's just to kind of confirm for you that the assembly code file that we exported from Assemble is in use here. So we'll have all those codes available to us. Okay, so we're just going to go through the families and match things to different assembly codes. So the workflow I'd recommend is go ahead and kind of create one of those data trees, export it to Excel, and just work with it. Kind of play around there, setting up the structure that you want to have for all the different wall types and element types that you're going to be estimating with. Re-import it, then bring it over here to Revit so you can assign it. Okay, so we have 190 associated as those. I have a slightly different assembly code assigned to these lower walls, this type pattern 2. You see that has the 180 associated with it right now. So those different types are going to come through. This whole thing with assembly codes and really, just mapping them. I think it works with just all the different types. Let's go over to, like, for example, one of the windows. There's the assembly code for it right now. So it's currently set up to just the 100 category. We'd probably want to change that to be something a little bit different. So that's just windows. If you had subtypes of windows in here, you could then look for different codes that you assigned to those different subtypes and just kind of map them there. Just, however much detail you want in here. So if I was just doing windows, I might just say that, oh, it's per square foot of window as opposed to like by count, but it could really be whichever way you want to sort of estimate those. Okay. So we got things going in Revit here. And in Revit, if you have those assembly codes mapped up properly here, they're going to flow for us nicely into Assemble, so you don't have to reassign them there. And the good news is if we do it right, if we create new walls using that same type, they'll already have the same assembly code because the assembly codes are assigned by type. Therefore, as you update your model, you won't have to keep on changing things because those assembly codes are going to flow forward just right out of the Revit model. So huge win as we work with this. Okay. Now, in terms of actually generating the Assemble model, I'm going to recommend a different way of doing it from what I looked at last time. In that, now they have the ability to kind of pull your models directly from the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Let me go over and kind of look at that briefly, and then tell you why I'd recommend not doing it that way. Oops. Okay, so we can come over here and say add or update models, and then pull them directly from your ACC folder, and it'll pull the latest published version. Okay, and that seems to be very, what is it? Like a good way to do it. It seems like it's a very kind of a solid workflow, and that'd be the way to do it. But it turns out when we do it that way, I think some of you saw that the assembly code information didn't always come across. Like, in fact, it often didn't come across. There seems to be some real uncertainty in the way that's implemented. Now, I think that'll get better over time. I sort of think of that as a bug right now, but I think it's actually more reliable to use the Assemble plugin than actually do it this way for carrying those assembly codes across. At least it seems to be working very reliably for me. So I'd recommend doing it this way instead. So instead of doing it by pulling the model here and using the publishing mechanism to get the latest version, okay, we can use the older method, which we used to do directly from Revit, and it seems to be a lot more reliable. So I'd recommend that. So I'm going to put this away and not do it here. Okay, we're going to create a new model here, and what I'm going to do is go back over to Revit. Let's recap. Wrong one, sorry. Close this up. Okay, where did Revit go? Revit is next door. Okay, and I have the Assemble plugin downloaded. Okay, it looks like this, publish and sync. If you don't have that downloaded yet, it's really easy to get. What I usually do is just go over and say, Assemble Revit download. And you can pull it in here. Okay, they also have some things for integrating with Primavera, with Excel, some different things there, but I usually tend to use this one. And when you install that, it shows up. Looking like this. Okay, there's two choices here with the plugin. There's one called Publish and there's one called Sync. And publishing takes your Revit data and pushes it forward to assemble to a model. It'll work for the first time as well as for later updates to the model if we kind of keep everything named the same. So this is all based on sort of, keeping your Revit model, model file named the same thing. Then it will recognize that as you're making changes, you're updating some prior work. Okay. Truth is, if you set up your cost codes right so that you're not doing a lot of manual work in Assemble, it'll flow pretty easily. If you do change model names, you just have to kind of keep the assembly codes kind of consistent. But it typically tends to be better to kind of publish updates because then it can sort of see what the differences are between the different versions. Okay, so publish sends your Revit model up. Sync, you're going to find out, does something different. Sync takes any work that we've created and done in Assemble and brings it back. So for example, if in Assemble you have reassigned the assembly codes to be a different assembly for some elements, it'll pull that information back from Assemble and embed it in the Revit model. So, that's useful for you too, if you're making a lot of changes in Assemble. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to take this model and just say publish it to a new model, to my Stanford Try Assemble site. Okay, we're going to go to whatever projects we have access to, and I have access to this global AEC testing. I can say how fine or coarse I want that to be. I'm going to actually just let it be fine right now. I can basically bring all the elements or filter the elements. Only the ones that are showing up in the visibility graphics overrides are displayed. I don't really have too many excess elements here, so I don't have to turn that on. But if you did, it would filter the elements to only be the ones that are kind of currently just visible in the 3D window you're looking at. And then we're going to go through and either publish to a prior model, that would be an update, or I'm going to create a new model. Okay, I'm going to call it video update, just so I can kind of keep it straight from the prior one that I did. So Assemble demo video update. So it's going to ask, do we want to publish any sheets or no sheets? That's that issue one you asked about yesterday about what the whole issue with the sheets were. The sheets would take any sheet views and also publish them, so we could then pull off the 2D views and be doing some takeoffs from those. But I'm not going to publish any sheets in this case. I'm just going to publish the 3D model. Okay, you get to give it a version name. I'm just going to call it version 1. Okay. This versioning is how it understands the difference between various versions when we say highlight the selected or show the changed elements. So you can see it actually doing its processing. It turns out this way is actually very quick, as opposed to having it all happen back in the cloud. Great. I can either view the model here, I'll just open it up. Okay, or go elsewhere. Just flip over to Chrome that way. Now to check this, to see if it actually worked, what we want to see is where the different assembly codes sort of matched up. And again, what's going to happen is if the assembly code is used in Revit, matching one of the ones which is in the data tree, it'll match up and then be able to associate the data, the cost data, kind of using that assembly code. So for example, this is one of those ones that should match. We'll come on down here. And you can see that the assembly code did match up. Yay! Okay, so that is progress. So now when we say estimate, it'll pull that information across. Let's just kind of show you that little piece of the process. Now, I talked about views a little bit and how it's useful to set up different views that show the data in different ways. Let's go ahead and adjust the columns in the inventory right now to show the elements that we think are going to be useful to you, or most useful for doing this kind of cost coordination, and save that away as a view so we can kind of recall that quickly. So I'm going to go to the columns in the inventory, and I'm just going to pull some things in here. I'm going to get the assembly code and bring that across because I'd like to kind of see that it matched. I'm just going to retype them, and I'm going to do the assembly description. Okay, that's just the textual description. Then I'm going to bring in the unit cost, and finally the total cost. Now, it's been adding those columns down at the bottom, so they are there. If you don't really, for the purpose of this kind of cross-checking, don't want to see all this detailed information about the elements, you can hide it from the view. Now, it's still there, it's just not being displayed in the view. So I'm going to go back to count each model name. I can keep the model name, it'll just show where it came from. I'm going to really focus on the quantity and the unit. That is the quantity that is being used for, the quantification for doing the multiplying. So I'll sort of see what that is, because that'll be the multiplier by the unit cost. Say done to all that. Okay, so this is a fairly straightforward table right now. You can sort of see where things matched up. You can sort of see where things didn't match up. So for example, for all these drywall partitions, there's a kind of an assembly code that has matched. Doesn't probably have any values in it. We'll see if it does. Actually, I know it doesn't because I didn't put any in there, but we can edit the Excel table to kind of put those in there for those costs. But you see it actually matched a fair number of them. And for things that aren't quite here, okay, you can kind of add them into your cost breakdown structure so you have values filled in for them too. So having kind of created this view, let me put that away right now. Syncs files for me in the background. I'm going to say save this view. And matching, whatever you want. And why am I saving this view? That's just going to make it really easy to recall this view later. So I have different kind of views of the model in here, and this estimating code matching is always going to bring up this one that has the unit costs and the total costs in there. Okay, so we're actually doing pretty good. If you now want to use the information in the cost breakdown structure, okay, or to go through and kind of fill in the values, you can say estimate. I'm going to use the fill in the gaps as opposed to redo everything. Fill in the gaps, again, generally is good when you have a bunch of holes that want to have filled and you haven't done anything to it. I found a use case where redo would be useful if you change the assembly code after the costs have already been assigned and you want to redo, because then it would re-look up the values and reapply them. But let's just go for fill in the gaps. Okay, so you'll see that for many things, there's no cost values associated, but for a few of them, down here, we do in the Excel table have some values. So 190 has a unit cost of 120, 180 has a unit cost of 90. And you can sort of see things adding up over here. So about $980,000 of that first amount, about 8,000 square feet. Okay, super. So we got it working. We have the assembly codes kind of carrying the data across. That's all feeling really good. We have this initial estimate over here. So we're in pretty good shape about what's going on. Okay, so this is fine for your initial estimate. You're probably going to be A-okay here to get going with some quick estimates. Again, because you're doing it this way, if you had a different configuration, but it used the same wall types, the same families in the different configurations, again, the information would flow across automatically and you don't have to do a lot of manual work, kind of adjusting it for everything. But the more common scenario that I think you're going to run into is that your design teams are going to change the Revit geometry underneath you, and you want to be able to pick up those changes and kind of adapt your estimate based on those changed quantities. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go back over here to Revit. Let's close that up. Okay, and again, we'll just do something simple that is easy for us to spot. So for example, I'm going to take that wall type and pull it up. Okay, that is, oh, it's the EIS and metal stud. So I think that's the primary. I'm going to type there. I'm going to copy some more of these. I'll just create something similar. And again, I apologize for just kind of doing kind of dumb examples, but it makes it quick to kind of see what the impacts are. Okay, so I just added some more of that type. I'll grab a little bit. This is a different wall type there. That's type 2, so I'll create similar there. I'll move a little around one of those. Super. So, okay, because it has the same family, they should already have the assembly code mapped to them because that's the way it works. So you can see they have the right assembly code. Super, that part's looking good. So if you create a new family type with a new structure, again, just coordinate amongst all the different elements yourself. What I'd probably do is make sure to add it into the Excel spreadsheet, bring it into Assemble, then export it and bring it over into Revit. You don't have to bring it into Revit right away, but the important thing is you just got to get consistency between those numbers. So, you know, you're in charge of maintaining that dictionary of all the types that you're using and the costs that you're using. Okay, that's all looking good. We are ready to update our estimate based on this. So this is strange. I thought it worked with sync, but it doesn't. Okay, so I know I've told some of you sync is the way to do this, but sync is really, again, about pulling the information back from Assemble. What we want to do is publish again. Okay, so we're going to publish an updated version. You get to choose again which project. Okay, you get to choose which model within the project. I'm going to go to that video update model. Okay, super. I'll say continue. And then again, I'm still not going to publish the sheets. Now, this is your chance to go through and give yourself a version number. Version 1 was the prior one. They're recommending something even better, but I'll just go for version 2 to be simple. And you can see it's publishing and doing its thing. You'll see it's really quick. That I like, as opposed to having to wait for the kind of ACC kind of publishing mechanism to do its thing. Super. So I can go back and say view the model. Let's take a look. Okay, so here we are. That looks like our new model. That looks fine. Let's go over here. We'll say show the changes. So that was kind of as advertised. Oops. Back over here. You can sort of see the things that were added. It's like that one's a funny color, but that's the one that got kind of extended. So we can sort of see what happened here. You can even see the variances for type 2, pattern 2. Quantity looks like now there's 1,300 more square feet of that. 212. Oh, that's all that. Okay, that's just showing the changes only. Okay, so in this case, we added some of those over here. This is one where we extended it because there was some in B. B was the prior version, and A is the new one. So that's the changed one as opposed to the well, it includes some existing because it's that wall over there. Super. So we have all these changes and we can look at it that way. But the truth is, and you might remember one of my question marks at the end of the workshop was really, what's the best way of kind of focusing in on those so that you can go through and update the costs for those. But here's the nice thing about this workflow where it saves you some time. If we go on back down here, let me change over to my estimating code matching view, since that has the columns that I want to see. Let's go on down. Okay. You'll see some of these numbers have changed. What if the total cost has changed already? But what to watch out for is this guy right here. What that's indicating for you is that like in the category that's collapsed right now, the unit costs aren't the same. There's some variation between the two. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to spin that down and show you that of the walls, most of them have the 120 assigned. Some of them don't have any cost associated with them yet. Okay, similarly down over here, some of them don't have any cost associated with them yet. I think, there we go. There's two of them down in there. Oh, those are the circular ones. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? Panic and go through and try and like change everything? Nah, it's actually going to be pretty easy. It's really just hit the estimate button and say fill in the gaps. Okay, and now they're even. Everything's there. The quantity's there. The cost has been updated. So that's all the fuss there is to going through and changing these things. If you want to go through and change things, just go through and republish the model. And if you have the cost breakdown structure mapped this way, so it's even between Revit and Assemble, you don't have anything else to do. You just have to go through and say, reapply the costs, and it'll flow on through. So I'm hoping that'll make a big difference to you kind of in your work, and just making it very simple to kind of move things across. So that's the high level of what we're going to be doing here. I'm just going to show you one other small variation, but I think that'll take care of 90% of what you guys are doing with this to kind of get your initial estimates out. So like go ahead and have at that. The variation I wanted to show you is just really what that sync button is for. So you can sort of see what that sync button is for. And what it's all about is if you make a change here in Assemble and you want to carry that work back to Revit, okay, so it's consistently implemented with how that works. And as an example, let me get these. Oh, I'm just going to take these walls over here. I'm just going to take these walls, which are currently assigned to 180. Okay, and I'm just going to give them a different assignment. I'm going to assign them to code 185. Okay, just to show you that's a change I might make as I'm working on my estimates. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say that as opposed to $90 a square foot for unit cost of that, it's now $100 a square foot. The other thing would be if you've, well, even this other place where this might play in is you've updated those costs. Okay, and you want to reassociate the costs, but I'm making a change here. Okay, so now these are all going to be 180 walls. Now these walls still have the $90 a square foot. They aren't updated. So this is a case where when we estimate, we want to redo. Okay, because we want to fill in the new value of 100. Okay, so now those are updated. That's looking good. They all have this 185 and 100. Okay, and that's looking good. Okay, we're happy in Assemble. That part's looking good. We've done this work, but we want to remember to change those back in Revit. So here's what we got to do. We come back over to Revit, close that up, and you might remember that all these are still assigned to, stop that. An assembly code of 180. We want that to be the 185 that we didn't assemble. So what we have to do is come on over to, where to go? Assemble. And we say synchronize. And we have a choice here. Let's get our project. Okay, it's from that model. We have this choice of really, as we're syncing and we're pulling data values out of Assemble, okay, do we only want to kind of update the values that are visible in the current view? That's fewer values because it's only columns that are exposed, or sync everything. Yeah, in general, it's going to make more sense to just sync the things that you've seen. So the things that you've changed. There's this possibility that you could be changing things in other columns and might affect the geometry. And it's a little more drastic. That's why this be careful with sync everything. Yeah, I'm going to sync all of the properties chosen as columns in the view. Okay, so that's for all the instances. You could also sync the properties for the instances and types in the view. I'm going to go for all the columns. So I'm going to say that's okay. Continue that. Oh, we have to choose which view. That's the view. Like, don't get stuck there. I got stuck there before and forgot that I had to click that and say continue. So what it should be doing now is going back and for those columns, seeing what it did. You can view the log if you want. And sort of see that it updated some codes. Oops, go back over here. So now for this little wall of type 2 and all the walls of this pattern type 2, it's 185. Okay, so it's mapped to the correct assembly code. So from here on out, as I keep on working, they'll already have the right assembly code in it. So just, that one backwards scenario that you may need every once in a while if you make a change in assemble, how you get it back to Revit. But you probably won't need that most of the time. So again, what I'm going to leave you with is get that cost breakdown structure set up well, kind of really edit it in Excel to get it the way you like it. Excel's here somewhere. There it is. Make sure it's all here. Once it's here, load it into both assemble so you can match against it. And then from assemble, export it and load it into Revit so you have perfectly aligned codes. And if you do that from there on out, assemble will be pretty kind to you in terms of just tabulating those things and making updates very quickly as your designers keep on giving you different versions of the model that you have to kind of generate quick estimates for. Okay, that's the high level. Hope that was helpful to you. Good luck as you get started. And as always, if you kind of run into problems or have questions, just ping me and we'll do our best to get them answered for you. Okay, you guys take care and have a great day.